My son told the restaurant hostess, "Seat him at the back, he's just a guest," while waving me away. But when the chef came out with my old photograph on the wall, the entire staff faced me. His chest caved. If you're watching this, tell me where you're watching from. But listen first, because I need you to hear the way my son moved his hand through the air. He didn't look at me when he did it. He looked at the young hostess standing behind the podium, her pen paused above a leather book. "Seat him at the back," he said, with a little flick of his fingers, the kind people use for stray dogs in the street. "He's just a guest." There wasn't any anger in his voice. That made it worse. There was only boredom, like my presence was a small inconvenience he was trained to remove. The room was warm with evening noise, glasses touching, knives whispering against plates, laughter sailing over the wood tables. I stood by the door and felt the night air still clinging to my shoulders. For a moment, I thought maybe he was making a joke, a harmless tease I'd correct with a raised eyebrow. But he didn't turn. He was busy with his phone, his wife beside him, already gliding toward the front table, like it had been designed for the two of them alone. I didn't say anything to the hostess. She was young, and her cheeks went pink the way people blush when they know something is wrong, but don't have the power to fix it. She gave me a careful smile that said, "Please don't make this hard." I shook my head once to make it easy for her. "It's all right," I told her, and my voice came out flat enough to lay a table on. "The back is fine." She led me past couples and friends and a table of loud men who had loosened their ties. The lights were soft, and the floorboards hummed with steps. When we reached the last two-top near the kitchen door, she set down a single menu like an apology. Through the round window of the swinging door, I could see a pan flame up, blue at the base, gold at the top. The heat touched my face. "Can I bring you water, sir?" she asked. "Sir, not Dad, not Baba. Words travel a long road before they reach your ears. Some arrive wearing shoes, others arrive barefoot and leave prints on your chest." I could have called my son's name. He would have had to turn. He would have faced me with that practiced smile, the one he gives to clients when he wants them to sign quickly. But I didn't call him. I sat down and placed my hands on the table, palms flat, as if I were measuring the wood. I let my breathing slow. Anger is easy. It burns up and eats you from the inside. I have learned to use something colder than anger, something that makes the edges of the world sharp and clean. I watched him from the corner of my eye, the way his shoulders set back when the sommelier arrived, the way he nodded like a king for giving tribute. My son likes to perform. He thinks a restaurant is a stage and the bill is the curtain call. He forgets who paid for the lessons that taught him to speak so confidently. The restaurant was not new to me. It was a body I knew by touch, the curve of the banister near the restrooms, the slant of the window that let the last wash of sunset into the room, the faint scent of lemon oil rubbed into the wood every morning. The walls were lined with black and white photographs in slim frames. People smiling, chefs with their arms around each other, an old man lifting a glass with a grin so wide you could see the missing tooth at the side. My eyes found the far corner where the frames crowded each other like people on a train. I didn't need to stand up to know what hung there. Time rearranges rooms, but it leaves its fingerprints. From the front table, my son laughed at something his wife whispered. He was 32, but moved like a boy trying to fill a man's jacket. He had my jaw, his mother's eyelashes, and a walk that created small winds in its wake. He liked the front table. He liked being seen. I remembered suddenly a smaller table, a smaller boy, a birthday candle we couldn't blow out because he was laughing too hard. The memory pressed in close, uninvited and warm. I let it. The first time we came to this place, the sign wasn't even up yet. The plaster was still drying on the walls, and the smells were paint and coffee and new wood. My wife carried our son on her hip because he refused to sit in the stroller. He kept trying to touch everything. Door handles, salt shakers, a stack of menus still wrapped in brown paper. "Hands," she warned, smiling. "Sticky hands." The chef back then was young and nervous, always pushing his hair back. He wanted to open a restaurant that tasted like home, he said, only better. He wanted to serve food you remembered the next morning, like a song stuck in your head. He had the recipe. He didn't have the cash. I had both the cash and the wish to see a man's dream stand up on its own legs. We sat at a dusty table with coffee and paper cups. Our son tapped his cup with his tiny spoon, making a sound like a bell. The chef looked at him and said, "You'll be the first customer when we open, little man." My wife laughed and clapped her hands. She wore a blue shawl that night, the one with the thread loose at the edge. The air smelled like rain and wet cement. The city seemed to lean close to listen. I placed my hand on the table now and felt the faint tremble from the kitchen door swinging open and shut. The hostess brought water, her eyes soft. "Will your party be joining you?" she asked. I followed her gaze to the front, to my son's raised glass catching the light, to the easy grin that used to be mine. "They are already seated," I said. The words were simple. They left a taste in my mouth like iron. She nodded and left me with the kind of quiet you can hear. I let it settle around me, heavy and calm. I have been alone before, and in worse rooms. At the front, my son lifted his wine to the light and pretended to read it like poetry. The sommelier nodded along, hands folded. "Something bold," my son said. "We're celebrating." He didn't look back to see me, but I saw the small movement of his wrist as he made a short circle in the air. The circle means everything is under control, that he is the center and the room must revolve. I had trained him to be decisive, to direct the flow of a room when the room was his to run. The problem with lessons is that students sometimes forget where the classroom ends. I wished, briefly and sharply, that his mother could see him now and lay a gentle hand on the back of his head, the way she used to, and say his name in that soft tone that slowed his breathing when he was afraid of thunder. My wife could take the heat out of the world with one quiet look. She is not here. Thunder is nobody's student. The waiter came to my table, a tall man with shoulders like a coat rack. He looked over his shoulder at the front table and then back at me. He had the careful expression of a man trying not to take sides. "Would you like to order, sir?" he asked. I opened the menu, even though I already knew what I wanted. The font had changed since the early days, but the bones of the place were the same. The braised lamb with rosemary, the lemon risotto that had once made my wife put her fingers to her lips and close her eyes. The grilled sea bass she called the clever fish, because it was always slightly better than you remembered. "The lamb," I said, "and the salad with fennel." He wrote in his pad, a small smile flickering like a match. "Excellent choice." Excellence is hope wearing a suit. From where I sat, I could see the wall of photographs reflected in the glass of the bar back. I let my eyes rest on that reflection, the way a man looks at a river before he steps into it. There we were in one of those photos, though no one at the front table knew it yet. My wife's hair was tucked behind one ear, and I had my arm around the chef, both of us surprised by the photographer's shout. Our son sat on the bar stool, with his feet not reaching the rung, a cone of paper around a handful of fries. He had salt on his lips and a proud look because the chef had given him the first plate to leave the kitchen on opening night. I remember that moment so clearly that it feels like it could still be happening somewhere in the building. You can live in 2 times at once if you stand perfectly still. "Back suits you," my son's wife said loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear. She had turned in her chair just enough that her profile showed, and then she turned back, performing modesty. I didn't respond. I looked at the waiter carrying 2 long-stemmed glasses to a couple celebrating something private. The couple touched their fingers together on the table. There are so many kinds of hands in the world. Hands that push away, hands that pull near, hands that build, hands that break. I have done all 4, and some I regret more than others. When the salad came, the fennel smelled crisp and clean. I ate slowly because the body must be kept steady even when the heart staggers. The higher you float, the easier it is for someone to push you down. My son has been floating for a while. It isn't entirely his fault. He grew up breathing a rarer air than I did. He thinks oxygen is an entitlement. So, when the hostess first asked, "Table for how many?" and he answered, 2, it was as natural to him as saying his own name. When I arrived behind them, he didn't blink. He made a decision and expected the world to nod. He didn't even look embarrassed as he waved me away. He was proud of being efficient. Pride can make a person stand very straight until it snaps them in the middle like a dry branch. A busboy moved past me with a tray of empty glasses, and I noticed the small mark on the side of his jaw, a birthmark like a coffee stain. It pulled me further into memory without my permission. There was a summer when my wife worked late at the clinic, and I showed our son how to slice lemons with a small knife, how to curl his fingers under so he wouldn't cut himself. He was 8. The kitchen smelled like soap and day-old bread, and the radio played a song we both misheard but sang anyway. He watched my hands carefully, copying the movement. "Like this?" he asked. "Exactly like that," I said, and I was so proud that my chest ached. When he cut a neat circle and held it up to his eye like a coin, I remember thinking, he is watching me. He is learning what a man's hands can do. I didn't think about what I was teaching when I never let him see me refuse a table, never let him see me turned away. I didn't think about the power of being welcomed and what it makes you believe you deserve. "Would you like me to bring anything to the gentleman at the back?" I heard my son ask the waiter in a tone that suggested generosity. The waiter's face twitched. "He has ordered, sir." "Good," my son said, dismissing the discussion like a fly from his sleeve. He turned to his wife and lowered his voice, but not enough. "He needs to learn to sit quietly." It wasn't a knife, it was a spoon, and it still cut. I placed my napkin across my lap and kept my eyes on the photograph wall. The lamb arrived, and the steam carried rosemary and stock, and something darker, like the kind of woods where the paths are old and true. Dinner is a ceremony even when it is private. The plate was warm. The meat yielded to the fork without protest. I ate and tasted a year that had been hard and a night that had been worse. I let the heat run through me and out again, and I timed my breaths with the swing of the kitchen door. Open, close, open, close. Life teaches you how to build a calm room inside your chest. You will need it. The world will try the locks. This is the part where you'll want to shout in. The comments, I know. Why didn't you go up there and tell him off? Why didn't you pull the tablecloth from under his dinner and let the glasses shatter? I could have. I have pulled bigger things than cloth. I have shaken rooms. But there is a difference between noise and power. The loudest man is not always the strongest. My son needed to learn something tonight, and I wanted the lesson to land where it would bruise his pride but not break his life. There is a debt you owe to the people you love, not to let them walk into the world with a face that has never met the ground. A little boy at the nearby table dropped a fork. It clattered, and his mother smiled as if the sound were a song she had been waiting for. She picked up the fork and kissed his hair. The hole in my chest widened and then closed, like a mouth that wanted to speak and changed its mind. My wife used to kiss our son's hair like that. She'd hold him with both arms, even when he was too big for it, as if she could sew him to herself through the fabric. When she fell ill, he would sit by her bed and bring her the smallest flowers from the garden, white ones that grew near the wall. He would press them into her palm and say, "For you." She would tuck them behind her ear and thank him like he had delivered treasure. Love teaches you value. Loss teaches you price. I finished eating and set my fork down parallel to my knife. Old habits tidying the table, even when the world is untidy. I looked up and let my gaze drift again to the far corner where the frames crowded. The photograph there, the one from opening night, had been hung a little higher over the years as new faces arrived to fill the wall. The light above it had burned out at some point and been replaced with a colder bulb, so the old faces looked winter blue. But I was there. My wife was there. Our boy, my boy, was there, off-center, stealing a fry before the plate reached the first table. You could see the moment of mischief captured just before it dissolved into laughter. The chef had insisted on that picture. "We'll put you on the wall," he'd said that night. "No matter what happens, you'll be here." People say things like that to sound grateful. Some of them mean it. At the front, a small commotion started. The kind you can't see, but you feel ripple along the surfaces of things. The sommelier had left my son's table with an odd look, moving faster than a man carrying glass should. He disappeared toward the kitchen, and a murmur rose behind the bar. The hostess glanced at me, then quickly away, as if she had stared at the sun. I sat still. I didn't need to stand for the room to begin turning. The waiter who had taken my order spoke to someone near the service station, and that person spoke to someone else, and the kitchen door swung open with a different rhythm now. Upright, urgent. The sound of a pan clattering to rest reached us all like a sentence hitting the period. I folded my hands. My heart beat steady, not fast. This is the part where people often demand the explosion, but I have learned that the sharpest noise is not a shout. It's the scrape of a chair leg when someone rises for you. Years ago, on the day the sign finally went up outside this place, the chef took my wife's hands in both of his and promised that her laughter would stay in the walls. She had laughed easily that day. The blue shawl had slipped from her shoulder, and I had reached to fix it. Our son had stuffed his mouth with fries and said, "It's too salty," and then eaten two more to be sure. We were a small family in a room that hadn't learned yet how to be a home to strangers, and still the bare lights made a halo over us. I put money on the table that day and said, "Not alone." The chef's eyes had gone wet. "Then a blessing," he said. "You bless my house, I bless yours." My wife had squeezed my hand. Some blessings take years to return to you, but when they come back, they know your name. I could hear my son asking for the wine list again, louder now because his voice is good at growing. He called the hostess by her name as if he had given it to her. "We're still waiting," he said. "Is there a problem with the kitchen?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. And in that moment, the swing door pushed wide and stayed wide, held by a hand with old scars across the knuckles. I didn't turn my head fully. I watched through the glass behind the bar, in the quiet pool where all the movement collects. The shape coming out of the kitchen was a man I had seen younger, leaner, but just as steady. His hair had gone to salt. His eyes had not changed. He wore his chef's coat like armor and like skin. He took 3 steps into the dining room, and the hum of conversation thinned as if someone were turning down a radio. I placed my fingertips together, forming a small roof. The air around me shifted, not like a breeze, more like a tide when it decides to come in. I didn't smile, not yet. I let the moment show itself to me first, so I could give it back to the world without shaking. The chef looked up, scanning the tables the way a father looks for a child in a crowd. Calm first, then certain. His gaze passed over my son at the front, lingered only a second on the expensive bottle balanced in the sommelier's hand, and then kept moving to the back where the light was colder and the tables were smaller. He saw me. His face changed. Not a lot. Enough. He said my name like tasting something he had cooked 1,000 times and still loved. I didn't stand. Not yet. I kept still and let every person between us feel the space open. A path made of air and old promises. My son's laughter faltered. You could hear the stem of a glass touch wood too quickly. You could hear the small intake of breath from the hostess who didn't know whether to look at me or at the man walking toward me. In that room, in that quiet, the years lined up like chairs, and for the first time all evening, I felt the floor under my feet as if it belonged to me. He says my name, and the room tilts a degree, but my son pretends not to hear it. He turns his face toward the window, toward the faint city lights, and lifts his chin like a man who has bought the evening with a signature. "Excuse me," he calls to the hostess, gentle the way you're gentle with someone you don't plan to tip much. "We're expecting a tasting menu. Please focus here." His hand moves again, short and neat. The same little circle that means keep the world spinning around me. And make sure the gentleman at the back is comfortable. He prefers it quiet. His wife hides a smile behind her glass. She wants people to think this is kindness. It is not. It is a stage cue. He is telling the room how to look at me. Not as a father, not as a man who knows these walls like old friends, but as an extra seated beyond the lights. The waiter who took my order glances between us, his pen caught mid-air. He starts toward me, then stops when my son lifts 2 fingers without looking. The gesture is small, but it has the snap of habit. "We'll take the Côte de Boeuf," my son says, "and bring that Burgundy you mentioned, the one in the locked cabinet." The sommelier nods the way people nod when money speaks, and the cabinet door opens with a private click. "Also," my son adds, "don't add anything to our table we didn't order. Nothing complimentary." He aims that last word toward the room, not toward the staff. He wants it to travel. He wants me to hear that the door is closed, that the front is his kingdom, and the back is where spare people sit. It's a lesson he learned in rooms I bought. Lessons repeat if you don't correct them. The hostess, poor child, edges toward me with a napkin folded like a bird. She places it on my table, as if an extra napkin can build a bridge where a son has taken an axe. "If you need anything, sir, please let me know," she whispers. A couple at the next table looks away quickly, cheeks hot with borrowed shame. I give the girl a nod. "You're doing fine," I say. "Thank you." When you're young in a room like this, you think your job is to carry plates. Your job is really to carry people's pride without breaking it. Tonight, too many hands are already full. My son leans back in his chair the way men sit when they want to busy the staff. He taps his finger against the crystal, then taps again, not impatient, just certain that his taps are music. "Make sure he's not put on our bill," he adds, and the word he hangs on is not bill, but he. 2 letters, heavy with distance. The waiter swallows. "Yes, sir," he says, because tonight sir is whoever pays the most loudly. "We're celebrating," my son tells the sommelier again, turning his smile up a notch. "It's been a long time coming." He doesn't say what. He never says the nouns that matter. He says only words that shine and roll before falling into the dark. Once, when he was 11, he asked me why I never shouted in meetings. "Because silence is a better hammer," I told him. He nodded like he understood, and then spent his teenage years swinging the loudest parts of himself at every door. Some doors opened. He thought they opened because of thunder. He didn't see me inside the walls, steadying the hinges. I taught him to tip before he had a salary. I taught him not to let a room make him small. I forgot to teach him that the surest way to be large is to lift the people around you. That forgetting is mine. Tonight, I will try to correct it without breaking him. A waiter glides by with a tray of amuse-bouche, balanced like a puzzle. He stops at the front table. The little bites arrive on cold spoons lined in a straight row, a green shimmer of herb oil catching the light. My son's wife claps her hands softly, pleased by the idea that small things can be more expensive than big ones. They are careful not to look at me now. It is their favorite trick, the vanishing act they perform by not letting their eyes land on the person who proves they have a duty. He leans toward her and says, too softly for the room, but loudly enough for me, "He'll get used to it." Then to the waiter, warmer. "And make sure the chef knows I'm here." There's the shine again. He thinks his name is a key, and he wants it slipped under the kitchen door. In my mind, a different door opens. I see my wife leaning against the counter with a tea towel around her shoulders, steam softening her voice. She is telling me, in that way she had, that children listen hardest when you're quiet, that if you keep your mouth still long enough, their own words echo back to them like a lesson taught by a mirror. "Let him walk ahead without you," she told me once, when he had come home bragging about a promotion he had not really earned. "Let him feel the wind, then be there when he turns and finds empty air under his feet." She had a way of making patience sound like an action. I can hold a line for years if she is the one who asked me to draw it. The sommelier carries the bottle like a treasure rescued from a drowning. The cork comes out with a sigh. People turn their heads at that sound, the way they turn toward the chime that ends a service. The burgundy pours into wide glasses. My son inhales as if the grapes will tell him secrets. He watches the swirl and says, "Ah," like he has known it all his life. My hand lies flat on the table. The veins stand a little higher than they used to. The skin is thinner, and the bones announce themselves in the light. I curl my fingers once, slow. If you're watching this later, tell me where you're watching from, and tell me if your hands have learned how to look still when your heart wants to light a match. "Manager," my son says, not loudly, just to make the word carry a stripe of command. The man in the dark. Suit appears like a fish slipping from deeper water. "Yes, sir." "There's been a misunderstanding," my son tells him. "The gentleman at the back, he's independent. Don't move anything on our account. He'll be fine." The manager's eyes flick toward me, then away, like a man checking a mirror and wishing he hadn't. "Of course," he says, because the room still believes the front of the house is where the night really happens. He turns to leave, and my son calls him back with a finger. "And do you think the chef might have a minute? He'll want to greet us." The manager nods again and disappears toward the kitchen. Pride is a tide. It goes out. It comes back. It carries boats that think they're captains. I take a sip of water. It is cold enough to bite the teeth. The sound from the kitchen has changed. There is a rhythm you learn in restaurants if you spend enough years in them. A way the pans speak. A way the line breathes. Tonight, the breath is held a little. The knives tap the boards with a different tempo, like a drummer who has picked up a new song mid-performance. The door swings wide and then doesn't. A hand holding it open for longer than is required. I see only shapes and heat, but I know what is being said. A name traveling backwards through steam. The staff glancing between a photograph on the wall and a man at the back table trying to be small. My son continues his show. "To us," he says to his wife, and they touch glasses. She crooks a finger at the camera on her phone and catches her face in the glass. "To us," she answers, and both of them drink a good vintage like it will forgive the cheapness of the moment. He starts telling a story about a client who cried on a call and how he handled it like a surgeon. People at the next table listen without meaning to. He makes sure of that. He has always loved an audience he didn't invite. He wants the room to take notes and then repeat his best lines on the way home. The hostess brings me bread. It arrives warm, the kind of warm that makes your hands think about winter, even if the night outside is kind. She sets butter down and a small bowl of salt. "On the house," she says, and immediately flushes because she knows the rule my son tried to write over the evening. "Thank you," I say again. I tear the bread and watch the steam lift and fade. My wife used to tear bread like this, with her thumbs close together, neat, disciplined, no crumbs on the cloth. She said you could tell what kind of person someone was by the way they handled bread, by whether they broke it and passed the best piece away from themselves. Tonight, the best piece will pass itself where it wants to go. Across the room, my son waves the waiter closer. "Actually," he says, "we'll pay now and keep the table. I don't want any confusion later." He places his card down like you put down a stone to hold a paper in wind. He keeps his finger on it, not because it will blow away, but because he likes the pose. And if the gentleman decides to leave early, make sure a cab is called for him. He gets tired. The waiter's jaw tightens. He is not a man who shows his feelings, but he has one, and it is at the corner of his mouth. I could speak up. I could ask my son to stand, to come here, to look at the wall and find himself small and loved and forgiven. But that would be for me. The lesson is for him. Inside my chest, a slow door opens and shuts. Not anger, something colder. I let sentences form and dissolve without speaking them. I let memories sit beside me and keep my face calm. I think of the safe at home that still smells faintly of metal. The papers inside it are not needed tonight. Not wills, not deeds. Tonight, paper won't teach him. People will. Faces will. The weight of a room changing will. When you punish with documents, you win in corners and lose the center. When you punish with truth, the air itself moves. The busboy with the coffee-colored birthmark comes by with still water for my table, though my glass is full. He sets it down like an offering to a shrine he cannot name. "I like your tie," I say, because it is the only thing he got to choose today. He smiles, surprised, and touches it like it is a living thing that needs feeding. "My mother picked it," he confesses, and the confession warms the space between us. He turns, and the kitchen door opens again. This time the sommelier's voice has a note in it I recognize. Careful respect, trying to find speed. The manager moves quicker. The room knows when its center is shifting, even if it cannot say why. "Is there a problem?" my son calls, the same way you call to a waiter you believe is wandering. His voice wears a coat of light humor. The manager raises a hand. "No problem, sir," he says, but his eyes are not on my son anymore. They are traveling past him, to the photographs, to the back. My son notices. He straightens, the line of his mouth losing a little confidence. "Good," he says, and then laughs to smooth the wrinkle, turning to his wife for agreement. She gives it, quick, automatic, brittle. I smooth my napkin on my lap. The linen is thick. It breathes like a living thing when you press your palm against it. "Do we stay?" my wife once asked me, in a different restaurant where a different man had tried to make me small. "We stay," I told her then, "because you cannot teach a son to hold his ground if you don't know how to hold yours." She smiled and said, "Then we'll order dessert first." I almost laugh at that now, the sound just a breath in my chest. She was always better at turning a knife into a spoon. The manager reaches my son's table with the bill. My son points at it without reading. "Put 20%, he says, as if generosity is a number you declare like you're calling a seat on a train. The manager makes no move. He is listening to something else. The quiet that forms before AO. Doctor opens and a new weather enters. The kitchen, at last, lets go of its held breath. A figure steps through, not fast, not slow. The white of the coat is bright against the wood. A scar crosses his knuckles like a thin river on a map. He wipes his hands on a towel and looks first where my son expects him to look. He gives the front table that small, polite pause, the one you give a stranger who might become a friend. Then he lifts his head and lets the room widen. My son takes the pause as praise. He leans back deeper, readying the handshake. "Chef," he says, practicing the familiarity before it is offered. "We've heard wonderful things." The chef doesn't answer. He is still looking. His eyes find the wall in the corner, the cold bulb silvering the frames. He sees the photograph that outlived 3 remodels. He sees the child who stole a fry, and the woman with the blue shawl, and a younger man who believed that money could be a blessing if it was placed quietly and with both hands. I watch all of this happen, not because I can read minds, but because I have learned how rooms tell their stories to those who wait. I sit very still. The chair beneath me is solid, old wood, a little scar where someone once caught it with a knife. I run my thumb along that scar, the way a man touches a memory to be sure it is his. The chef steps forward, past the bar where the glass holds a reverse world, past the couple who lift their napkins away from his sleeve, like they're moving their feet for a parade. He passes my son's table. He doesn't stop. He doesn't hurry. My son turns in his chair, a small confusion blooming where charm usually lives. "Chef," he tries again, but the chef doesn't look down at the menu, doesn't ask about the meat temperature, doesn't praise the choice of wine. He is looking at me like a man coming home and finding a light in a window he thought had gone out. My son feels the shift and grabs for the old grips. "Wait," he says to the manager, to the waiter, to the heir. "Who's in charge tonight?" His hand is still on his card. He thinks that is a leash. He thinks pulling it will bring the night back to heel. No one answers him because the room is answering a different question. The hostess stands straighter. The busboy forgets to move. The waiter's pen stops writing. You can hear the kitchen hush. The line cooks resting their knives for a heartbeat. The dish machine swallowing a breath. This is how power really sounds. Not loud, but listened to. I let a smile touch only one corner of my mouth and then fall away. Not victory. Recognition. My wife used to say that respect is a door that opens both ways when it opens at all. Tonight, one hinge turns. My son clears his throat. He says, "Manager, with less shine, more need." The manager doesn't turn. My son's wife lowers her phone. She finally looks toward the back and sees that the light there is different, that what seemed cold a moment ago is where the warmth is walking. She touches my son's arm. It is the first honest movement I have seen her make all night. The chef stops 2 tables from me and pauses. He doesn't need to come closer yet. He knows what is happening, the way a conductor knows when the orchestra has found the note. He looks at me, and there is a small, tired joy in his eyes, the joy of someone who has waited a long time to thank a person correctly. He glances at the wall. Then he does something simple. He lifts his hand and makes a small motion, inviting someone to turn. It is not me he invites. It is the room. It obeys. Chairs angle, faces follow his gaze. If you are watching, you would think this is a trick. It is not. It is the easiest magic there is, the kind made from gratitude and memory and a picture frame with dust behind it. My son, because he cannot stand a silence that doesn't have his stamp on it, tries again. "Chef, I'm..." He says his own name as if he is setting a key down on the table between us. The chef nods once, like a man who hears a bell from a church he does not attend. He takes one more step. The staff behind him start to line up without being told. An old habit they learned, opening week when they would come out to the floor to thank the first customers who believed the place could work. They are not doing that for my son. They are doing it because the past has just walked into the present and asked for a chair. I breathe in, slow, calm, not ready to stand, not yet. My son is still in the lesson. He needs to hear it all the way through. He needs to try one more time to pull the room back by the edges and feel the cloth slip through his fingers. He will. He has to. And when he does, when the little panic touches his lungs for the first time, he will learn the shape of it. He will know, from this night forward, what it feels like to wave a hand and have no one move. He will remember, if he is wise, that the man at the back was not a guest. He was the house. I rest my hands on the table and wait for the last cruelty to arrive. The one pride always sends out when it is scared. It comes, right on time. "Manager," my son says, voice lower now, brittle, "please inform the gentleman that if he insists on staying, he is to avoid our table. This is a private celebration." He looks at me for the first time since the door opened. He doesn't say Dad. He doesn't say my name. He tilts his head and tries to shape his mouth into something winning. He fails. "Enjoy your evening," he adds, and the words are poison-coated with sugar. I nod once. I pick up the water and drink. The glass is heavy. It feels good to hold something that obeys your hand. When I set it down, the sound it makes on the wood is soft but clear. A period. I meet his eyes for just a heartbeat, And then I let mine move to the wall, to the photograph where a boy is caught stealing a fry, where a woman in a blue shawl keeps all the light for herself just by smiling, where a younger version of me is shaking a chef's hand as if promising something important. I did. I promised to show up. I promised to keep my voice even. I promised to give my son room to walk and a place to land. The room is here. The landing is on its way. The chef steps toward me like a man walking down a road he built with his own hands, calm and sure, and the air around him changes the way air changes before rain. He says my name again, louder this time, and it rolls through the room with weight. People turn. Glasses pause mid-air. The hostess straightens as if someone pulled a string in her spine. My son hears it now. He must, because his jaw moves before his eyes do. He turns slowly, expecting the greeting to land on him, expecting the handshake to stop at his table like every other thing he is trained to stop there. It does not. The chef's eyes move past him like water moving past a stone that thought it was a dam. He is coming to me, and I sit still, letting the room measure the distance and learn what it means. When he reaches my table, he doesn't speak first. He looks at me the way a man looks at a photograph he has carried in his wallet for 20 years. His hands rise a little from his sides, then fall again, as if he has to put down excitement to pick up respect. "Sir," he says finally, but there is warmth under the word, like coals under ash. "I thought—" He stops, swallows a memory. "It has been too long." I stand now, not quickly, not to make a show, only because some moments deserve both feet on the ground. "You kept your promise," I say. His smile arrives late and honest, and something inside my chest loosens, the way a knot lets go when you've been patient enough with it. Over his shoulder, I see my son's face trying to rearrange itself into the shape of control. He is learning how much effort that shape really costs. Behind the chef, a line cook peeks through the door and sees us together. He nudges the person next to him, and then two more faces appear. Curious first, then respectful when they catch the chef's expression. The manager approaches not to interfere, but like a man drawn to the center of a story. "Chef?" he asks low, but the chef is already moving. He steps half a turn, lifts his chin toward the wall where the frames crowd each other, and addresses the room without raising his voice. "Do you see that corner?" he says, pointing with the whole of his hand, not a finger. "That's opening night?" Heads turn as if a bird has crossed the ceiling. He doesn't look at my son. He looks at the picture like he is introducing an old friend to a tired party. The faces in the frames glow a little under the cold bulb. The old man with the missing tooth. The young cooks with sleeves rolled high. My wife with the shawl. Our boy, my arm around the chef, caught in a handshake that was more like a promise wrapped in fingers. "He put us on the wall," the chef says, nodding toward me, "before we had a sign outside. When the inspector said we needed another sink and I didn't have a coin left in my pocket, he said, 'Don't borrow, take this and stand taller.' When the first week went quiet and I thought I had made a mistake, his wife told me to plate the lemon risotto like a song, and she showed me how to smile at a table that hadn't learned my name. He looks at me then, and the line cooks behind him lift their chins as if the story itself pressed their shoulders back. The manager's mouth opens and closes, a man trying to remember whether gratitude has a procedure. My son shifts in his seat as if the chair has turned into something with edges. He reaches for his glass and misses the stem by a hair, then catches it on the second try. His wife sets her phone down and folds her hands, a pose of humility she does not yet know how to wear. I see the moment he recognizes the picture, the bright-eyed boy stealing a fry. His eyes flick to me, then to the wall, then back, not sure which story to believe. "Is that you?" he asks his wife, as if she can answer for the past. The chef hears the question and answers it without turning. "That's him," he says, nodding toward me. "And that," he adds, warmth edging his voice, "is the first plate we ever served. He stole a fry before it reached the table, and his mother said that meant we would never run out of laughter here." The room laughs softly, not at me, not at the boy in the photo, but at the way memories can still make a noise when you touch them. The staff begin to gather without being summoned. The hostess leaves her podium. The busboy rubs his hands on his apron once and moves closer. The sommelier, holding the open bottle like a question, drifts toward the corner of the bar to watch. The waiter who served me stands at my shoulder and clears his throat as if an introduction is required. It isn't. The chef steps aside so that the line of sight from the room to the wall is clear, and for a long breath, everyone looks where he looks. Respect is a fragile thing until it is shared. Then it becomes a beam you can walk across. I watch it form. I watch my son watch it form. He understands beams. He has built careers on them. He doesn't recognize this material. "Sir," the manager says to me, finally finding the word that fits the moment. He stops, and for once he lets silence do the rest. He bows his head just enough to be true and not theatrical. The hostess, eyes wet, whispers, "I didn't know," though she could not have known, and the apology is not for me, but for a world that sometimes teaches the wrong language first. I nod to her. "You were kind," I say, and kindness is the only currency that spends anywhere, even in a room like this. The busboy with the birthmark on his jaw smiles openly now, relief loosening his shoulders. He tells the waiter near him, "That's the kid in the picture," as if he is sharing gossip, but what he is really sharing is belonging. My son tries to stand a second too late. He pushes his chair back and it catches on the carpet, scraping a small protest that the room hears. "Chef," he says, forcing lightness into his tone, "if we had known you had a personal guest, we would have requested a different night." He looks at me when he says personal guest, trying to frame me again in small words. The chef turns to him for the first time, and the look he gives is polite but firm. The look you give a man who has walked into the wrong office and insists he belongs there. "He is not a guest," the chef says gently. "He is the reason this place stands. When my father died, I nearly closed. He came in, sat at this very back table, and told me that foundations don't just hold up walls, they hold up hearts. He stayed till midnight and said we'd open again in the morning. We did." He gestures toward the kitchen. "Every plate we serve has a little of that night in it." I don't move. I don't need to. The room is moving for me now, and not in the loud way my son prefers. It shifts on small feet. Glances, nods, the tilt of a head toward the corner, the soft shuffling that means people are making space inside themselves for a new truth. The chef sets a hand on the back of my chair, light, respectful. "Would you allow me?" he begins, and I understand what he means. I shake my head once and he stops, eyes searching mine. "Not yet," I say quietly. This is not refusal, it is pacing. The lesson must pour slowly or it spills. He nods, understanding more than the words. He turns to the staff and speaks in that calm kitchen tone that settles a busy line. "Friends," he says, and that word alone lands like a plate. "We have a house story walking among us tonight." He gestures toward the wall. "Please remind yourselves who taught us how to be a room." The hostess brings her hand to her chest. The sommelier lowers the bottle to the bar, the label facing inward as if now the wine is the one that must prove itself. The waiter at my side shifts subtly, aligning his body with mine, a small, old-world instinct that turns a guest into a host without a single word exchanged. I think of my wife then, with a clarity that stings. I see her pressing a palm against the cool glass of that very frame when the photo went up, smiling at our boy's stolen fry, tapping the corner of the picture with her knuckle, the way she tapped the bones of a melon at the market to hear if it was ripe. She had told the chef to put a little more lemon in the risotto that week. "Make people remember you tomorrow," she said. He had listened. He still listens. He listens now to everything that is not said, to how my son's breath is a fraction louder, how the room is still, how the staff are turned. He knows the most important part of a kitchen is not the heat, but the attention. My son tries another angle. He looks at the manager, at the sommelier, at anyone who will meet his eye. "We have a reservation," he says, as if a line on a screen can hold the tide. "We've ordered the Côte de Boeuf. We're celebrating." He cannot pick a noun for what they celebrate, because nothing real is in his hands tonight. The manager nods, deferential, but his body remains angled toward me. "Of course, sir," he says out of habit to my son, but his voice has changed its address. My son hears it. He presses his lips together to hide the tiny tremor. He glances at me, looking for something to push against, to catch, to wrestle back into the shape he wants. I offer him nothing but a steady gaze and the patience his mother taught me. The chef leans closer, speaking to me as if we were in the quiet kitchen after closing. "Do you remember the first morning?" he asks. "The coffee was so weak your wife said it needed a spine." He laughs softly, and the laugh shivers the surface of the room like a pebble dropped in a pond. "We stayed up all night fixing the grinder." He touches his knuckles with his thumb, a cook's habit. I fixed nothing, I remind him. I only listened while you argued with Beans. He shakes his head. You told me to argue with them kindly. The staff smile, not because they understand the joke, but because they understand the tone. Kindness is a seasoning you can taste even when you don't know which jar it came from. He turns then to the wall, and the movement is an invitation. The waiter at my side takes a step that is barely a step. The hostess follows. The busboy stands taller. The sommelier sets down 4 clean glasses on the bar with soft clicks like punctuation. The chef says, "Friends, a moment," and the kitchen door opens wider, an unseen hand holding it. 2 cooks step out and stand along the threshold, their aprons marked with the night's work, faces open. They look not at my son, not at the front, but toward the back, where I am. This is not ceremony for show. This is the old habit returning, the house acknowledging the hands that steadied it when the wind blew. The staff begin, one by one, to turn toward me. It is slow, not choreographed, because real respect is never neat. Chairs creak. A napkin is set down. Someone at a corner table nudges his companion, and they follow the gaze the way you follow the smell of something cooking well. My son cannot stop himself. He stands fully now, pushing his chair back too far. It bumps another table and makes a small chime of glass. "Chef," he says, the charm fraying, "this is getting theatrical. We came for dinner. We didn't come for a history lesson." He tries to laugh it into a joke. The laugh does not catch. The chef looks at him with the patience of a man who has pulled many pans from many fires and learned which ones can be saved. "All houses have history," he replies. "The good ones remember it on purpose." He turns back to me. "Sir, will you walk with me?" he asks quietly, not toward the front, not toward the podium, but toward the wall of photographs. I do not make the room wait for my answer. I nod and place my napkin on the table, neat, aligned with the fork and knife as I was taught as a boy in a house that had too few things, but great respect for the ones it did. I follow the chef, not in front, not behind, exactly beside. As we move, space opens like a curtain. People lean, eyes bright, some smiling because they are inside a moment that feels larger than themselves. The staff edge closer, not crowding, just forming a low tide around us. The manager stands still, hands joined in front of him, the posture of a man at a baptism. The hostess brings her hands together, not clapping, just holding them like she's keeping something from floating away. We stop in front of the frames. The chef reaches up and wipes the edge of the glass with his towel, a habit so practiced it is love. My wife looks back at me from inside the rectangle, light caught in her eyes, in that way light loves eyes that love rooms. The boy in the picture, my boy, has his mouth open in triumph around a stolen fry. I hear a little surprise catch in my son's breath behind us. The chef speaks not to me, but to the room. "This wall is our spine," he says. "Every person on it taught us something that made this place better. The man beside me taught us the thing we needed most. How to be grateful before the world gives you a reason." He uses my name again, and it carries. I feel it touch the chairs, the bar, the bottles, the plates, the people. It lands last on my son. He swallows it like medicine he does not want and might one day be glad to have taken. I put my palm on the frame, light, the way my wife once did. The glass is cool, the cool runs through my fingers into the bones and settles there. "You kept the picture up," I say. "You kept us on the wall." The chef nods. "We don't take down our beginnings when we get new paint," he says. "We hang more frames, we add more stories." He turns to the line of staff and says, "Faces forward." They already are, all of them. The hostess, the busboy, the cooks in the doorway, the waiter at my side, even the sommelier at the bar, hands resting on the counter, head inclined in a way that says, "A bottle is not the only thing with depth tonight." They all stand face toward me, not like soldiers, not like fans, but like family at a table when someone beloved walks in late. The room is not loud, the room is full. I look across their faces and feel something old and steady lift in my chest. It is not pride, though pride is nearby. It is belonging, the kind that does not need to be announced. My son is still standing by his table, floating, reaching for anything to hold him up. He tries one more time, low voice aimed at the manager. "This is my father," he says, as if claiming me now will fix the pieces. He's with us. It is meant. To be generous, it sounds like a rescue that never learned to swim. The manager turns finally and answers him with a small bow. Yes, he says, sir. He looks back to me and repeats softer. Yes. The chef clears his throat. The room eases a breath, and somewhere a fork touches a plate and makes a bright little sound that feels like the world clicking into a truer place. I let my hand fall from the frame. I turn to the chef. He lifts his chin in a question. I shake my head again. The same small no, that means not yet. He understands one more time. The staff remain facing me. My son, seeing the tide he cannot pull back, lets his shoulders drop a fraction. He has been given a mirror. He is not ready to look fully. That is all right. Mirrors wait. Lessons do too. Tonight, the foundation is reminding the walls how they learn to stand. The chef lifts his chin as if catching the room's breath and holding it steady in his hands. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. Friends, he says, and even the glasses seem to listen. We have someone with us who made this house possible. He doesn't gesture wildly, doesn't play. He points with an open palm toward the wall, to the crowded corner under the colder bulb. People crane their necks. A few lift their phones and then lower them again, ashamed to reduce a living moment to a small screen. The chef's eyes return to me. Sir, he says, and there is something like pride softening the syllable. Welcome home. The word doesn't slap or perform. It lands and sinks. I feel it touch the floorboards and run along the grain. The manager inhales like a man remembering the right prayer. The waiter beside me angles his body half a step closer, as if to guard a threshold. Behind us, my son's chair makes a little sound as he shifts, a noise no one thinks to mask for him now. I let the word settle. Home. I have lived in rooms that pretended at home and in rooms that refused it. This one, tonight, finds its old shape. I rest my hand on the back of my chair and study the photograph again. The boy bent over the stolen fry, my wife's blue shawl catching a bloom of light, my arm around the chef in a handshake that looks like a promise picked up and kept. The chef nods at the frame, then at me. We leave this up for a reason, he tells the room. When we forget who we are, we look there. When we think money is the only ingredient, we look there. When a bad night makes us small, we look there and remember who told us to stand taller. He doesn't boast. He doesn't decorate. He lays simple bricks of memory and asks the room to walk across them. My son clears his throat like a man stepping on a stage he didn't build. Chef, he says, smiling, trying to catch the moment by the collar. That's beautiful. We're honored to share the room tonight. We have the Côte de Boeuf coming, and we'd love your recommendation on... The chef's eyes move to him with polite interest, then past him and return to me. My son's smile flickers, as if a draft has found a path under the door. We'll take care of you, the chef answers him, kind and final, a full stop that doesn't need ink. My son's fingers tighten on the stem of his glass. He covers the motion with a quiet chuckle. People who live in the front of rooms learn this. When the room changes its riverbed, you can paddle as hard as you like and still go somewhere you did not mean to. The hostess approaches me, not hesitant now, but careful in a reverent way that isn't for show. Sir, she says softly, may I prepare a table by the window? The one we usually keep for family? Her eyes flick to the chef, who nods once, approving what her instinct already knew. The sentence opens a door in the air. Family. The word doesn't hurt. It warms. I look toward the window, the one where the last smear of evening uses the glass like paper. That corner has been the stage for birthdays, proposals, apologies heavy as stone. It's the table my son prefers when he wants to be seen. I could demand it. I do not. I make the room hear the lesson I promised to teach. Seat me where you'd seat your own father, I say. The hostess's lips part with a small breath, as if the answer has been given to her by someone she loved. Then the window, she whispers, and steps away with purpose. The manager follows, already instructing the floor with 2 fingers and a nod. Chairs move, not a scramble, a reweaving. My son watches the motion as if trying to judge the tide by the size of the waves. Manager, he says lightly, we had the window this evening. It isn't true. He had the front, a fertile but lesser kingdom. Still, he tries to plant a flag. The manager's professionalism holds. He bows at my son's table with respect, but his compass points elsewhere now. Of course, sir, he says. Let me adjust to accommodate the house. The house. The word moves through my son like a glass shard he tries to swallow without cutting himself. He smiles. It looks like pain wearing polish. No need, he says. We're comfortable where we are. It is the right sentence spoken a moment too late, and the room knows it. The chef signals with 2 fingers, and the line understands without a single shouted order. A pristine cloth blooms over the window table. 2 new glasses appear, catching light like they were built for it. A plate, small, white, shallow, arrives with a glistening spoonful of lemon risotto, the steam lifting in the same ribbon my wife once chased with her nose and a grin. The waiter brings it toward me with both hands. With the chef's compliments, he says, though the compliment runs in the other direction. I don't sit yet. I let the arrangement finish itself. The busboy with the birthmark places a tiny vase with a single white flower in the very center. Not a bouquet, not an apology, a note. He looks at me, and then at the wall, and then at me again, and his small nod feels like a bridge between strangers. I turn to the chef. He understands the question I haven't asked and answers it anyway, an old rhythm between us. Walk with me, he offers. His tone isn't ceremonial. It is a friend in a kitchen after midnight. I take the steps at his side. As we move, the staff peel away from their stations, not abandoning, not rushing. They drift into a simple line that forms as if the floor has seams placed exactly for this. Hostess, sommelier, waiter, busboy, 2 cooks still wearing heat on their sleeves. They don't face the window. They face me. Some diners straighten. One old man near the bar raises his glass a few inches, like a salute you give when words would spill. My son's wife begins to lift her phone again, then lowers it. She understands finally that this is not content. It is context. Sir, the sommelier says, may I pour for you? He holds a bottle he had intended for the front. He shows the label without flourish, sideways, as if offering a book he thinks I might like. I shake my head once. Water, I say. For tonight, water is enough. He smiles as if I have taught him something gentler than restraint. He brings a simple tumbler and fills it, then steps back with a hand over his chest, not dramatics, a hold for steadiness. The hostess pulls the chair at the window back an inch. I sit. The chair takes me into its shape. The room breathes, saves the breath, and breathes again. The risotto waits, a small pale sun. My son stands. He cannot steal stillness. Chef, he says louder, the voice he uses in rooms where contracts require witnesses. I want to be very clear. There has been confusion. He gestures toward me, to the wall, trying to bind us in a knot and cut it himself. This is my father, he announces for those who might not have known. Then, owning what should have been given, we're together. The room gives him the dignity of hearing the words and choosing their place. The chef bows his head a degree. Then perhaps you will also sit, he replies evenly, and allow the house to do what houses do. The instruction is as gentle as a closed door. I take the spoon. The risotto is bright and soft, lemon whispering in the steam. The rice grains separate the way patience lets them be, not swollen, not stiff. I taste it. The years fold at the edges like pastry. My wife is suddenly beside me, not as a ghost that hurts, but as a presence that steadies. I hear her laugh in the little stir of the spoon against porcelain. I set the spoon down quietly and let the heat spread. Across the room, the waiter sets a basket of bread at my son's table and says nothing. It is simple bread. It is everything you need to remember humility. My son stares at it as if it were an invoice for something he didn't order and doesn't know how to dispute. The chef steps closer to the frame and lifts it down with care from its nail, cradling it like a child being moved from one room to another while sleeping. The glass catches the light. The faces inside seem to move. He turns and holds the photograph chest high. He does not parade it. He offers it. The staff by instinct center themselves. For a beat, the entire room faces me through those eyes. The young me, the laughing wife, the greedy fry thief boy who once belonged to both of us. The line cooks in the doorway straighten, some with their mouths open slightly, apprentices at a ceremony they have only heard about. The chef holds the picture a little higher and says simply, "This is the house." Not my name, not his. The house. And the house answers back. Chairs sound softly as people rise halfway and then sit again. not sure how to honor the moment without making it clumsy. A few hands tap the table in that low, respectful clatter you hear in places where applause would be vulgar. Someone near the bar says, "Bless," without meaning it religiously, and the syllable drifts up like steam. The hostess's eyes shine. She presses her lips together to keep them from trembling. The busboy wipes his palms on his apron and forgets he has nothing to carry. The waiter at my elbow steps a half step to the side, giving me a clear line to the door, the wall, the room, anywhere I choose to look, choose to go. Choice tonight is not a weapon. It is a return. My son cannot bear the bend of attention any longer. He moves forward a pace, fingers still on his card, as if that tether can pull back time. "Chef," he tries again, "we came to celebrate an acquisition. A major one. Important people are joining us." He names names for air to catch and return to him with shine. The air does not oblige. The chef's mouth lifts a fraction at the corner, neither unkind nor impressed. "So did we," he says gently. "We are celebrating an acquisition of a different sort, the return of a foundation to its room." He replaces the frame on its nail and adjusts it with a thumb's care. It hangs straighter now, or maybe the room does. The manager approaches my table with the old politeness you see in train conductors and tailors. "Sir," he says, "the house would like to send you the first course we ever serve from this kitchen." There is no menu in his hand. He already knows what it is. I nod. "Send two," I tell him, and I let the words sit a moment so my son hears them and hears what they do not do. "For the front table," I add, and the manager's respect deepens. "Of course," he says. "Thank you." I do not look to see whether my son reads the gesture as a rope or a hand. He will decide later, when the tightness under his ribs loosens enough to let his brain breathe. The staff turn, still face my way, and return to motion without breaking the circle they have made around this moment. The kitchen door swings. The rhythm resumes, adjusted, like an orchestra, picking up a theme and carrying it into a better key. The sommelier breaks a seal on a second bottle and leaves it unopened on a side table near me, the label turned inward again, as if guarding something. The hostess returns to the podium, but keeps her shoulders aimed toward my table. The busboy fetches fresh water with the solemnity of a man moving a candle in a church. The waiter at my side asks, "Shall I bring your lamb?" And I say, "Later." And he smiles as if we've shared a joke. A small ripple of laughter moves across the room at nothing in particular. Pressure releasing, not mockery. People return to their conversations, but the new gravity holds. They speak a little softer, regard their plates a little more, look at the faces across from them like they might be worth their best attention. The photograph seems to look back at them while they eat. This is what a house does when it remembers itself. It makes everyone behave more like family than like customers. It is not an act, it is a temperature. My son sits again because standing makes him look more lost. He leans toward his wife. She whispers something I can't hear. It must be gentle because his jaw unclenches. He stares at the basket of bread as if he might tell it a story. The manager arrives at their table with two small plates, the same spooned risotto set before me, and sets them down with care. My son looks at the dish like a man offered a memory he didn't ask for. He glances at me. I don't nod. I don't smile. I let the plate speak. He lifts the spoon, and the lemon rises. His face softens in spite of himself, the way faces do when a taste reaches the part of the brain where childhood keeps its light on. "Good?" his wife asks. He takes a breath that isn't for words. "It's familiar," he admits, and the word stands on its own legs. The waiter tops up his water without asking permission from his ego. My son doesn't notice. He is looking at the wall, not at the boy stealing the fry this time, but at the woman in the shawl who made a kitchen its sweet center without ever owning a pan. He lowers his eyes. A small crack opens under his breastbone. He doesn't know the name for it yet. He will. The chef returns to my table with a plate he carries himself. A small gesture that makes the room watch again, not loudly, but with real attention. It is the lamb, glistening, rosemary leaning like a branch after rain. He sets it down and keeps a hand on the edge of the plate for a second, as if blessing it. "For her," he says, and he doesn't need to say my wife's name. The pronoun fills the space perfectly. I touch the knife. The meat yields without drama. The first bite is a homecoming that tastes like backbone. I chew and let the salt and stock write their old sentence on my tongue, When I swallow, there is a clean place in my chest where grief sits, not as a wound, but as a portrait hung properly. Two cooks step out from the kitchen, standing. Behind the chef, not lined like soldiers, more like children who want to be present when a story lands. One has a tattoo of an orange on his wrist, the other has burned scars like geography. They both look at me like people look at a teacher who taught them something they only recognized after the test. "We've heard the stories," the tattooed one says, half to the chef, half to me. I smile. "Cook them better than you tell them," I say. He laughs, startled, and nods too hard. The scarred cook wipes his palms. "Yes, sir," he says, and the sir is not duty. It is gratitude. The public reversal completes itself without anyone announcing it. The staff take care of me first, without making a scene of it. When my son lifts a hand for the sommelier, the man gestures gently that he will come, and then he finishes pouring water at a foretop near the bar where a woman is telling a story with her hands. My son drops his hand and folds it with the other, learning a small patience that has been waiting for him since he was born. He takes another spoon of the risotto. He doesn't talk. His wife watches me, then him, then the wall. She dabs at her eye once, quick, pretending it is a lash. The chef looks to me. The question is back in his eyes, the one he has asked without words twice already. I understand. I tip my head, just enough. Now? He claps once, not loud, just enough to gather attention without asking for it. The room's sound lowers. He speaks toward the staff first. "Friends," he says, "face the window." They do, aligned without drill, a line forming not of bodies but of regard. Then he turns to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he continues, "thank you for allowing us a moment. We would like to honor a man whose quiet hands held the beam when this house was new. If you have ever eaten here and felt warmth you could not name, some part of it came from him and from his wife." He uses my name again, and this time he adds hers, not spoken often outside our door since she left. And the sound of it doesn't break me. It builds me. The little taps on tables start again, that modest percussion that says we see, we approve, we are part of this. The clapping grows a little, then halts because clapping is too noisy for what the room wants to do. People nod instead. Some lift their glasses. The hostess bows her head. The busboy stands with his hands at his sides like a boy in a photograph. The waiter's eyes shine in a way I pretend not to notice so he will not be embarrassed. I glance to my son. He is watching everything, not with the cold collector's stare he uses at work, but with the open, wounded gaze of the boy who once gave his mother 2 white flowers from the garden and watched her tuck them behind her ear. He is not pale yet, but the color has lifted from his face a shade. The air under his ribs is changing pressure. He presses a hand there. He does not know why. The chef bows to me, not stiff, not theatrical. An old friend acknowledging an older debt. "On behalf of this house," he says, "please accept our seat at the window as yours." He gestures. "Always." He doesn't promise discounts or write a plaque. He states a fact he intends to live by. The manager steps forward with a small leather folder, empty, and lays it gently on my table, a symbol spoken in the language of restaurants. The bill has already been taken care of by the house. I rest my palm over it and slide it back. "Keep that for the new ones," I say. "Let them buy their first memory." The manager blinks, as if I opened a window he didn't know was painted shut. "We will," he says, and means it. My son's hand leaves his chest. He watches the folder cross and return. He looks at his own card, still on the table, still waiting for someone to admire it. He picks it up and turns it once for no one. His wife touches his sleeve. "Eat," she whispers, which is the best advice anyone has given him all night. He takes the spoon again, and when he does, the muscle near his mouth loosens. He is closer now to the lesson than he has ever been. That you can't buy the part of a room that matters. I do not look long at him. I let him have privacy inside the public moment. I lift my water, and the sommelier, quick and quiet, brings a second glass and fills it, then sets it at the empty seat across from me, the seat where my wife would have sat. He does it without words and walks away before I can thank him, because he knows some gratitude must be held in the throat for a minute before it can walk. The chef rests his hand on my shoulder, warm, steady. "Eat," he tells me, repeating the instruction that once made our kitchen an island of mercy in a hard week. I do. The room does not roar, it hums, it continues. But the hum is truer, tuned. The staff face me and then return to their stations, bringing the facing with them like a scent on their clothes. The photograph on the wall seems brighter, though no one has touched the bulb. My fork moves. The lamb disappears in measured bites. The bread is passed to me like a ritual. The salad arrives crisp and clean. The water tastes the way water should when it has nothing to prove. And up front, my son sits in the seat he chose, learning, one breath at a time, how to be a man in a room that does not orbit him. He lifts his head once to look at me. I meet his eyes for a second and let mine say the thing my mouth will say later, when the room has handed him back to me. Not today, not like this. Learn. The lamb is half gone when the last part of the room settles into place, like a painting straightened by an invisible hand. The chef has returned to his pass. The line breathes in the new rhythm. The staff move with that quiet purpose good houses wear when the center is steady. I feel my wife beside me, the way you feel a remembered song. No weight, all presence. I take another bite and let the rosemary sit in my mouth until the heat fades. Then I put my fork down and lift my eyes to my son. He isn't speaking now. He sits forward, elbows close, as if he is trying to make less of himself without showing it. He stares at the wall where his own younger face is caught stealing a fry. He glances toward me, and then away, like a swimmer too far from shore pretending the tide is nothing. His wife says something low that I don't catch. He nods, not because he agrees, but because nodding is a way to keep your throat from closing. The manager passes their table with 2 small plates, more risotto, a gift that is not about free food, but about offering him a path back to being a son. He takes the spoon. His shoulders rise and fall. He eats. The chef appears at my side again, with a dish towel folded into a flat square. Old habit. Empty hands made useful. He looks over the room and then at me. "Will you permit one more thing?" he asks. I hold his eyes, and for a heartbeat we are both back in that first week when the tables were mostly empty and hope made the loudest sound. "If it will not turn dinner into theater," I say. He smiles, understanding the edge I won't cross. "It won't," he answers, then calls softly, "Manager." The manager steps forward. The chef speaks to him in a voice only we and the wall can hear. "Bring the ledger," he says. The word touches the old wood of my spine. The ledger is not a book of money. It is a book of beginnings. We made it that first month because the machines could not be trusted, and pens and paper never lied to us. In it are names and dates and 2 lines written by my wife in her neat doctor's script. Hang frames, feed hearts. The manager nods and slips behind the bar. He returns with a heavy book wrapped in brown paper, corners softened by years of hands. The chef doesn't open it. He lays it on the edge of my table and rests his palm on it for a moment, the way you settle a blanket over a sleeping child. "Friends," he says to the staff, not loud, not for the whole room. "Witness." The hostess edges closer. The busboy with the birthmark stands straighter, like the word has lengthened his spine. The waiter sets down water and retreats 2 steps so the space can breathe. The chef lifts the paper cover and opens to a page that has been turned so often, the crease holds its own memory. There is my wife's handwriting, thin and clear. Beneath it, years ago, I wrote a note in block letters because I am a man who prefers structure to flourish. If the house ever forgets, read this out loud. The chef runs his finger under the line and then closes the book. He doesn't read. He has already done what the sentence required. He looks toward the front, to my son, and then to me. His voice shifts, the way a tide shifts when it finds a new shore. "I should say one more truth," he offers, and I give the smallest nod. He faces the room enough that the words carry, but not so much that he is performing. Years ago, when our rent rose with a letter and a threat, I went to him, he says, motioning with his chin at me, to tell him we might not make it. He disappeared for 2 weeks. He came back with a set of keys and a quiet smile. He said, "The building is ours now. Pay what you can, grow what you must." He signed the papers in his wife's name. He never told anyone. The room absorbs this like bread taking soup. There is no applause. There is a silence that tastes like respect. My son's head lifts. He looks at me hard now, not the way he looks at men he wants to impress, but the way he used to look at me when thunder shook our windows and he wasn't sure if the house would hold. His mouth opens and shuts once. He glances at the wall again, then at the floor, then back at me. Is that true? He asks, small, to his wife, to the table, to anyone who can make the answer something he knows how to live with. I let the chef answer what I will not dress in pride. He made it true, he says. I could let it end there. That would be enough for most nights. A quiet unveiling, a room corrected, a son learning the sound of his own breath when it meets humility. But the lesson is not finished. It is not about buildings or tables or pictures. It is about what you do when the world does not revolve around you, and you are still expected to be a man. I lay my napkin on the table and stand. Chairs whisper on wood as people make a little room for my movement. I don't walk toward the front. I walk to the space between, 2 tables off the aisle, where you can touch both the new and the old with your fingertips. I stop there so I'm not looming over anyone. I turn my head toward the hostess, then the busboy, then the waiter, not asking their permission, just making sure they are included. Then I look at my son. Come here, I say. My voice is flat, quiet even. It carries because it does not try. He hesitates, a fraction too long, then stands and steps forward until he is a few feet from me. Up close, I can see that the skin at his throat is tight and that his eyes have that bright rim people get when the room is warmer than their pride. He starts to speak and I lift a hand, only my index finger, the way his mother used to when she needed him to stop running in the house. He stops. This is simple, I tell him. You will look at the people you tried to make small tonight. You will say you were wrong. You will call me by the name I earned before you were born. Then you will sit down and eat what is given to you. He blinks. His jaw works. He searches for a shape of resistance that will let him keep his footing. There isn't one. He looks at the hostess first. I'm sorry, he says. It's not the polished apology he gives in boardrooms. It is clumsy, which is how you know a new muscle is being used. He turns to the busboy. I'm sorry. The boy nods too fast, eyes wide. He looks at the waiter. I'm sorry for thinking money could direct your respect. The waiter inclines his head and saves him from drowning by saying, Thank you. My son's chest rises and falls. He swallows. He turns to me. For a heartbeat, I see the literal weight of the evening drop into him. His shoulders lose a little height. The front of his shirt barely touches and lifts with the breath he doesn't quite complete. His chest caves. Not a collapse, but that small, honest, buckling pride does when truth finally sits on it. He looks down at the floor, then up into my face. His voice is not smooth. Dad, he says. The word is simple and clean. It lands in the room like a cup set carefully on wood. I was wrong. That is all, and it is enough. The sound of it goes through me to the wall and comes back with my wife's smile hanging on it. I nod once, just enough to say the door is open. I do not embrace him. Not here, not now. He needs to learn that love is not a net that catches you every time you jump without looking. It is a ground that expects you to learn where the cliff edges are. I take a breath and look past him to the manager. Bring the house a plate, I say, on our table. He understands, and there is a murmur in the kitchen like a knife set on wood with relief. My son does something I did not expect. He turns to the chef, and without reaching for a hand he has not earned, he bows his head. Thank you for feeding my family, he says, and the sentence lands in me harder than any argument could have. The chef nods. Eat, he tells him, repeating the evening's instruction. My son returns to his seat. His wife touches his wrist. He does not pull away. I go back to the window. The chair accepts me like a welcome you trust. The sommelier sets the second water glass more firmly on the empty place across from me. And for a heartbeat, I imagine a white flower behind my wife's ear, a shawl slipping, her small laugh the way light laughs when it finds a glass. I touch the rim of the glass with my fingertip, a thank you to the space that held her and holds me. The manager arrives with 2 plates that used to be the entire menu, the lemon risotto, the braised lamb. He places one at my table and one, smaller, humbler, at my son's. He looks at me, not seeking approval, only sharing the sight. A father and a son eating the same food in the same room with the same air. The pride of one punctured just enough to let understanding in. We eat. Not at the same table. Not yet. The room does not need us to rush. People return to their nights, but you can feel the afterglow the way you can feel heat in a pan long after the flame is off. The hostess greets a late couple with a softness that was not there an hour ago. The busboy moves a little slower, placing water without spilling, the carefulness of someone who has seen respect offered in public and is trying it on. The waiter checks on a quiet two-top near the kitchen, with a hand on the back of a chair, the gesture of a man who knows some rooms are built from that touch. The chef steps back to his pass, calls an order with a steadier voice, plates a fish that glints and sets it down as if laying a story in front of someone who needs it. I finish the lamb, turn the knife and fork parallel, and rest my hands where my father taught me to rest them when waiting for dessert I hadn't ordered. The manager approaches with that old leather folder again, empty. "Sir," he says, "if you will allow us, we would like to place a small brass plate under the photograph with your wife's name, to remind us to hang frames and feed hearts." He says the words the way you speak to stone before you lift it. I look at the wall. I imagine the plate, small, tasteful, a thing most will not notice until they need to. I nod. "Only if you put the busboy on the wall one day when he earns it," I say, and the boy startles, then grins like someone opened a window on a hot day. The manager smiles, the kind of smile that stays in the face after the mouth relaxes. "We will," he says. My son finishes his plate and does something else I did not teach him. Perhaps his mother did. He stands and carries his napkin to the hostess desk. "Thank you for seating us," he says. She blinks, then steadies, then nods with that new strength a person gets when someone admits they were wrong. He returns to his table. He looks at me for instruction and finds none. He folds his napkin and waits. The chef appears one last time with something small under a cloche. He lifts the lid and lets the scent run out like a joke we all know but never tire of. Lemon zest, warm sugar, a hint of pine from the sprig he lets sit for the color my wife liked. It is not on the menu. It never has been. It is what he made for her the night she said the coffee needed a spine. "For her," he says again. I take a spoon and share the first taste with the empty glass across from me. Then I finish it. When the spoon touches porcelain, the sound is a bell. I push back my chair, stand, and take one look around the room. It is not different. It is itself. That is the difference. I catch my son's eye and tip my head toward the door. He stands. His wife stands with him. We meet at the line between window and aisle. He opens his mouth and then closes it. He will have things to say later. He has enough to hold for now. I turn to the chef and the staff and give them the only speech a house ever needs from a man like me. "Thank you for keeping your promises," I say. The chef answers, "Thank you for keeping yours. We are even. We will never be even." On the way out, I pause by the wall and touch the glass over my wife's face. "We kept the table," I tell her quietly, "so only the wood and the picture and I can hear." Then I step into the night air, which is cooler than it was when we arrived, the kind of cool that wakes a man up and makes him grateful for the heat he just left. Outside, the street hums. A cab. Slows without my asking and then keeps going because I lift two fingers and say, "Not tonight." My son stands beside me, unsure whether to speak or to wait. I save him. "Walk me to the corner," I say. He falls in step, matching my pace, not hurrying me, not guiding me, just being there, which is all that was required, and somehow the hardest thing he has had to do in a long time. We reach the corner. The light changes. I stop and look at him. The city noise curls around us like smoke that does not sting. "Tomorrow you will meet me here," I tell him, still flat, still even. "You will come inside. You will thank the staff again. You will sit at the back with me. We will eat, and then we will talk." He nods. There is no argument because there is nothing left to win tonight. He looks down at his hands, then up. "Yes, Dad," he says. The word is new on his tongue in this context. He holds it like a coin he finally earned. We stand for one more breath together, and then we part. He to his car and his wife and his work. Me to the walk that leads home, to a room where a shawl still hangs over a chair I haven't moved. If you've come this far, tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever sat at the back and felt the room turn of its own will. If this story made you remember someone you owe respect to, share it with them. If it steadied your chest or broke it a little, like and comment so others can find it. And if you believe houses should remember their beginnings, save this, share this, and say so out loud.